Shalom and welcome to a new episode of Sar-El Academy. The Academy is the educational division of Sar-El Tours and a service to our valued clients and global travel agents. Perched upon the tall mountains of Samaria north from Jerusalem, today you will visit the ancient site of Shiloh, where the 12 tribes of Israel gathered 3 times a year for hundreds of years to worship the great Jehovah. Chosen as the central place of worship and sacrifice by the first generation of Hebrew settlers in the Promised Land, Shiloh served as the spiritual and administrative hub of the nation, where the Ark of the Covenant was positioned and where the priests and the Levites served God and God's people. Watch and enjoy. Shalom friends, and welcome back to your virtual tour of Israel. On behalf of Sar-El Tours and Conferences, I am Reuven Doron, working with the good folks of Sar-El Media. We are delighted to host you here today at the ancient site of Shiloh. Nowhere else in the world can you come to a spot anywhere in the land of Israel. Many of these special places that we have taken you already to visit, and it is as if you enter a time machine and you travel back thousands of years to step into the pages of the Bible that you love so much. Shiloh, first appearing in the Bible, we find the word in Jacob's ancient blessing over his sons way back in Egypt, as soon as the original Hebrew family ended up in Egypt. It says, "Judah, you are he whom your brothers will praise. Your hand shall be upon the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion. Who shall arouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall the obedience of the people come." Shiloh appears in the scriptures from ancient times and always spoke about him who will come, him for whom the people shall gather, and the obedience shall be his. We know it is speaking of the coming Messiah. Fast forward 400 years, the children of Israel already are out of Egypt. They travel throughout the wilderness with the tent of meeting, with the tabernacle of the congregation, where God would meet with them, where the sacrifices were offered, where the service of God will be performed, and they enter the land. Moses is dead. Joshua, the general, leads the conquest. They take the land, and when the land mostly settled, they come to this spot, right here, in the heart of the mountains of Samaria, what the Bible calls the mountains of Israel. And right here at ancient Shiloh, Joshua gathers the tribes, provides the final distribution of the allotment of the land for the different tribes, settles the affairs of who lives where, and they establish the tabernacle right here on this piece of rock where we are standing today. And it is a big semi-mini temple. And they come 3 times a year to worship God, and the priests and the Levites and the celebrations and the sacrifices. For nearly 400 years, this was the central location of spiritual and religious practices for ancient Israel. And a lot happened here. Not all of it was good. Eventually it was destroyed. The Philistines ruined the place. The Ark of the Covenant itself was taken into captivity, and it was not restored until David was on the throne and brought it to Jerusalem. But the most important thing that perhaps came out of this place was a little boy, Samuel. His mother, Hannah, prayed here and pleaded with God that he will give her a son. She was infertile. She did not have children. God heard her prayer. Samuel was born. He was dedicated to godly service right here in this tabernacle and was disciplined. He was discipled in the service of the Lord. It was here in Shiloh. The Bible tells us that the word of the Lord began to come to Samuel. And oftentimes it was not pleasant revelations. He spoke about the impending judgments. He spoke about the disciplines of the Lord. And he spoke about God's claim for his people and his land, Israel. He was the last of the judges. He was the first of the prophets. And he's the one who established the kingdom of Israel. He selected King Saul and he anointed King David, and the kingdom was on the go. And concerning Samuel, it says at the end of his life in 1 Samuel chapter 7 that he judged Israel all the days of his life. He went from year to year on a circuit from Bethel to Gilgal and Mizpah, and judged Israel in all these places. Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah. We know where these locations are. But he always returned to Ramah, for there was his home. There he judged Israel, and there he built an altar to the Lord. The prophet Samuel, who was born from this place, who served God in this hillside, who heard the voice of the Lord in this tabernacle right here. This was the manner of his ministry, and it speaks to our hearts today. He judged Israel faithfully, and he would go on a circuit. He would start at Bethel, in the Hebrew language, Bet-El, the house of God. Then he would go to Gilgal, down at the Jordan Valley, Gilgal, where the reproach was rolled off the children of Israel when they were finally circumcised after 40 years of desert travels. Then he would go to Mizpah, in the Hebrew language, the watchtower, the high tower where the vision is given to the prophetic folks. And this is the manner of ministry. You bring the people to the house of God and you comfort our hearts. He brings us to the place where the shame is rolled off, where the sin is cleansed from our lives. And then he brings us to the prophetic watchtower of Mizpah to get a vision of what God wants in our lives to accomplish. But always he went back to Ramah, where his home was. And there he built an altar. And there he served God personally. This is the story of Shiloh. And it is our delight to introduce you to this legacy, which gave birth to this prophet, who was the last judge, the first of the prophets of Israel, and the one who established the kingdom. This is how God treats his people. He brings us to Bethel. He takes us to Gilgal. He raises us up to Mizpah. But we always come home to the altar, where the sacrifice is offered.
Shalom everyone, my name is Eris Hassan. I'm a licensed tour guide working for Sar-El Tours. I'm glad to be here with you in Sar-El Academy. This place was identified in the middle of the 19th century, around 1838, by a man called Edward Robinson. He identified this place as Shiloh because nearby there is a spring called the Spring of Shiloh. In Arabic, the Muslims living here for hundreds of years, they preserve the names of a lot of these biblical sites. Also, scriptures help us to find the different archaeological, biblical, historical sites. In the book of Judges 21, verse 19, it talks about this area and how to come here, how to get here. And it says, "Then they said, in fact, there is a yearly feast of the Lord in Shiloh, which is north of Bethel." Bethel is southern from here. "On the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem and south of Levonah. To our west, that direction, we have the road leading up to Levonah." Often when I come to this site, I could imagine how it used to be back in the days. This being the central of religion for all the tribes. The tribes coming from the south, Benjamin and Judah. From the west, you have Dan and Menashe. From the north, all the rest. From the east, all coming here to worship God as one big nation. And as they do, they give offerings in the 3 high holidays. They take a portion of the meat, they settle on the mountain, not to be too close to the Shekinah, to the glory of God, and then they would leave back home. Now, archaeologists doing surveys all around these mountains actually found ceramic from that time. Isn't that amazing? Also, we have here archaeology from a later period, because Shiloh was destroyed, burned by the Philistines. We read about it in 1 Samuel. But there used to still be a community nearby, and we find it through the layers of the tell. As you come here and tour around, you could find archaeology from different periods of time. We could find here a monastery from the Byzantine period. We could find here archaeology from the time of the kings, from the time of the judges. We could find different vessels where they used to contain wine and olive oil. You could find areas where priests used to live, because this was a big priestly community where the tabernacle stood for so many years.
This is the story of Shiloh. We look forward to have you here with us in Israel, and right here from ancient Shiloh, we bid you shalom, stay blessed, be good, and we look forward to have you here real soon. Shalom.